Welcome to Curious Life of a Child-Free Woman, a podcast celebrating unconventional choices and asking curious questions through the lens of a happy, child-free life. Every week, I chat with experts on today's most interesting topics, inspiring us to think differently, live intentionally, and find fulfillment on our terms. Whether you're child-free or seeking a space where parenthood isn't part of the conversation, you are welcome here. It's not about comparison, it's about possibility. Let's get curious together. When your world is upended by an unexpected change to your relationship, career, or even the way you imagined your future, what do you do? Do you look inward and try to find yourself? Do you look outward at what other people are doing? Or do you take advantage of an unexpected shift as an opening to expand your perspective? Today's guest, Laura Ericson, walked away from a 14-year career in higher education after her divorce became the unexpected catalyst for self-discovery. What followed wasn't just a career change, it was a full-blown reinvention. Laura is now the leader of an incredibly cool travel company, a writer, and a community builder. She's guided over 220 solo travelers through transformational experiences in destinations often misunderstood by the Western gaze, including Kenya, India, Cuba, Georgia, Morocco, and more. We're going to talk about curiosity over certainty, how traveling can serve as a mirror that reflects ourselves, and how Laura's child-free lifestyle gave her the freedom to say yes instead of playing it safe. Welcome, Laura.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for coming. Okay. When I watch your content, I see you tapping into travel as a means of expanding your perspective, but also I feel like you really vulnerably share how your travel has deepened your understanding of yourself. So I would love to understand, can you kind of give us the backstory of how you got to this place where you are now of owning a travel company and having this beautiful, free-spirited life?
Yeah, the Cliff Notes version is I worked in higher education for 14 years. I was in a 10-year relationship and was married, got a divorce in I think 2018. It's at the point where I don't remember anymore, which is a good thing. Now I'm like, how long ago was that? Feels like a different life. So got a divorce. The pandemic happened. And I think most people can agree that was not a fun time for anybody. It kind of shook things up for a lot of people. And for me, just being kind of newly divorced around that time, I was in the middle of reinventing myself and figuring things out and just really rebuilding my life. And one of the things I really wanted to do was travel more and travel differently. I had always traveled. I had parents that took me on trips when I was younger. I lived in Spain in my early 20s. But in that relationship, we kind of did the typical thing. We went to Mexico, we sat on the beach. That was just like our easy vacation that we took every year. And as I reflected back on my divorce, I was like, what am I doing now that I want to change? And my big thing was like, I want to see more of the world. I don't want to just keep going to Mexico. There's so many other places out there. I had at that point probably been to Mexico like 10, 15 times. And I was just like, Mexico is great, but that's 15 other countries I could have been to by now. So I wanted to travel differently. And then the pandemic happened and everybody was stuck at home. And that just like really, really made me want it even more. And so as things started to kind of clear up a little bit in early 2021, I started planning some trips. And one of them was to Mexico City, one was to Turkey, and one was to Colombia. And as I took each of those trips, I just realized like the more I did it, the more I wanted more of that type of travel, the type of travel that's a little bit less scripted, more off the beaten path. And I was really drawn to these destinations that pretty much everybody said was unsafe. Every time I said I was going to one of these places, people were like, either why the hell would you want to go there? Or like, is that unsafe? Or can you do that alone as a woman? I had a lot of people kind of talking in my ear. And although I wasn't scared to go alone, I also recognize that there are definitely like stereotypes that go with these types of places, and some of it's true and some of it's not. But either way, people definitely had these preconceived notions of what it's like to travel to these types of countries. But these are the places that I loved. And so I'd planned this trip to Colombia by myself and decided it probably wasn't the best idea to go alone. So I found a girl in a Facebook group to go with me. I had no idea who she was. We had just chatted briefly and I said, if you will go with me, I will plan the whole thing just so I don't have to be alone. And she agreed. So we went on this trip and she was like, "This was amazing because I didn't have to do anything. And you brought me to a place that I didn't even know where Colombia was on a map before this. And now she's like, I got to see this amazing country I never would have thought of going to on my own. And I definitely wouldn't have known how to plan this type of trip." This started out to be for me, but then I realized like this can do something for other people too. That there's a lot of people that are intrigued by other parts of the world, but are either afraid to go alone or like have no desire or maybe skill to plan these types of trips. So that's kind of like where it was born. And I personally, I had taken a solo trip after my divorce to Australia. And while I'm so glad I did, I realized I don't love solo travel for like 10 days at a time. It was just like too much time being alone. I didn't love being in these amazing parts of the world and doing it by myself and having nobody to share it with. And it just got kind of lonely and boring for me. So, aside from just the fact that I run a group travel company, like actually really love group travel. So that's kind of where it was born. I decided first I was going to start this travel company kind of as a side gig, like as a fun way to fulfill my own travel desires. And then I realized really quickly I couldn't really do both. I could only had so much vacation time. And not only that, but I was kind of half-assing both of the things. And so I think within like a month or two of deciding I was going to start a business, I just put in my 30 days notice and quit my job. I make it sound so simple, but I mean, I was a director at a college. I had a very long-standing career. I had benefits and, all the things. And so to walk away from that was not an easy decision, but I'm so glad I did because my life has completely changed as a result of it. And so now fast forward, I'm in my fourth year of running my business. Like you said, I've taken over 200 people to, I think, 9 countries with some new ones coming up. And it's grown to be something so much bigger than myself, which has been, I think, the most rewarding and surprising part. I think I initially really started this for me, and now I've definitely like changed to doing it for other people.
Some of the best businesses are born because it's something that we seek ourselves, whether we really realize that that's what we're building or not. So that makes sense to me. And I also relate like being alone when you travel, although that sounds like peak adventure to me, like so bold that you went to Australia on your own for 10 days. Even as an extrovert, like I enjoy other people's energy. That gives me energy. But when I've gone on trips by myself, I feel like at the end of the day, there's no one to be like, what was your favorite part? Or like, wasn't it so cool when this happened? Like just that camaraderie that you start to crave when you're having these cool experiences. Yes, like I think most of us, whether you are an introvert or extrovert or whatever, I think it's nice to have somebody to share an experience with.
Absolutely. And I'm never going to like diss solo travel. I think there's a time and a place for every kind of travel. Not everybody loves group travel, and I get that. But for me, it was just like, although you meet people when you travel solo, it's a lot harder to meet people when you're traveling solo. And certainly, I find when you're solo traveling, people kind of come and go. Like, meet a couple for a dinner, or you might meet somebody who's passing through on a tour, or, it's just more like you meet people and then they leave. Group travel is much more like, we're here for 10 days together and we're really like doing this together and getting to know each other honestly better than I know a lot of people in my day-to-day life. So I've just learned that it's a really special kind of travel, and there's so many like preconceived notions about it and so many stereotypes about group travel. I would say it's like picture somebody with a microphone and matching t-shirts and a flag, and like that's not the type of travel we're doing.
It definitely feels like a modern take. Okay, so solo travel, group travel. Am I right? Like, do people come to you? Obviously, they come to you and you take a trip as a group, but are people coming into the group as individuals, like as solo travelers? Is that a requirement or is that just like what happens usually?
It's not a requirement. I would say 50 to 75% of my travelers are coming alone. I do get people coming, like sometimes I get a couple, sometimes I get like sisters or friends, but at least half the people in my groups are coming alone. I always say I don't like putting a definition on solo travel because I think solo travel means different things to different people. If you asked a lot of people on my trips if they were traveling solo, they would say yes, because they're not coming with their friends and their family and they don't know anybody. And it's still terrifying to fly across the world with a person you found on the internet and then signing up with a bunch of people you've never met and being put with them. Like, to a lot of people that is solo travel. To other people, solo travel means like, oh no, you have to be alone the whole time and like that's a solo trip. I think it means different things to different people, but I see it as like The structure is there and like the people are there if you want them. And of course, you're going to have to spend some time with them. But there's also a lot of freedom on my trips for people to wander off by themselves and get their solo time as well.
Love it. You describe your trips as transformational, and you mentioned kind of being in this routine where you were traveling with your partner before, but it becomes this almost habitual, like we go to Mexico every year, or, you end up sort of taking a specific type of vacation. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. We see travel as a reward for working really hard, and we get to go be indulgent on a cruise, or some people have like a spouse or a best friend or a mother-daughter thing, and they go to the same destination every year and it becomes this tradition. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But when we think about transformational travel and somebody who's interested in this because they want to go deeper, they want to find out something new about themselves or about the world, like, how do you approach that differently? What makes one trip transformational versus just another vacation?
I think lots of things, but one thing I think I would say is right off the bat, I don't call my trips vacations because I don't think they're the stereotypical. I think when a lot of people think of a vacation, they think of relaxation, rejuvenation. It's like you just said, I've worked really hard and I deserve a vacation. I deserve a break. And while, yes, it does get you out of your day to day and, you're not doing your typical thing and you're traveling, it's so different. My trips are so different than your typical lay on a beach and like eat at restaurants and, just relax. Like there's not a ton of relaxation involved in my type of travel, and that's by design. It's more immersive and it's constantly doing stuff. Of course, we have breaks, but the main thing I think about my trips are like they're getting you outside of your comfort zone pretty much every day. It's putting people in situations they're not used to being in, being around people they're not used to being around, challenging them to do activities that they're not maybe used to doing or would think of doing. It might be like having a dinner in a foreign family's home. Like that might make people feel uncomfortable. Or maybe eating foods that you're not used to eating, or maybe you think you don't like. There's just a lot of things that I'm always designing into my trips to stretch people a little bit further. And then I think just the act of signing up for a trip and going by yourself. Well, again, I do let people come with friends, family, whoever. I encourage people to come alone because I think that alone is transformational. When you go on a trip by yourself or you sign up for something alone, I think a lot of people, I mean, most people probably can relate to like, I don't know, you go on a work trip or you go to a conference or you do something where you don't necessarily know the people that you're going to be hanging around with and you don't have like your spouse with you or don't have your friends with you. Like I always say, like that's your opportunity to kind of strip away everything that everybody knows about you at home and kind of figure out who you really are. And I think I have a lot of women on my trips that are divorced. I do have men too. So when I talk about women, my trips are co-ed. I do have some female only trips, but I have a lot of divorced people and I have a lot of parents. Like I just get all walks of life. I get women who are getting divorced at 60 who've been married for 30 years. Like when you take somebody like that who's maybe been in a long-term partnership and now they're going to a place they've absolutely never been, that's really, really foreign and new to them, and they're with a bunch of people that they don't know. You're really like putting people outside of their comfort zone. And I think that's when people really stretch themselves and try to figure out kind of who they are. And I think there's like a process that happens. It's almost like happens more accelerated when you're traveling because you're just being put in all these different situations, whether it's navigating an airport by yourself for the first time, or like I said, maybe trying some of those things that you never thought you would try. I used to have people getting a tattoo by the end of the trip that said they would never get a tattoo. I had people paragliding and, jumping off cliffs, going ATVing in the Sahara Desert and going in hot air balloons and just doing all kinds of things that maybe they thought they never saw themselves doing. And so I just think travel is like that perfect vessel for giving you the opportunity to transform. And I just think it happens a lot quicker than it might happen at home. It is intentional, but it's also not a thing where you sit there and you're like, all right, I'm just going to transform myself on this trip. Sometimes it happens throughout the trip, but then it also happens after the trip. Sometimes it's the reflecting that happens after the trip or the months or the years after the trip when you look back on it. So it's not like you go on a 10-day trip and you just come back and I'm a totally different person now. I mean, although I do think that happens, I think it's this ongoing process, and I think travel can be the catalyst for that.
Reminds me back in whenever Instagram was invented, 2013 or something, I had that overly used cliche as my profile that said, a comfort zone is a beautiful place, but nothing ever grows there. And it's cliche, like that's probably a played out statement, but I think there is so much truth in that still. And what you were just describing, I feel like it really highlights how much we get boxed in to our role in our day-to-day lives and the expectations of how we show up, even with people we love and we enjoy, the personality that we embody and what people expect us to say and who's going to take the lead when we have this, we're hosting a dinner at our home, who's going to do the laundry. Like there's all these little things where we just sort of embody this boxed in persona. And when that is inherently stripped away, like we go on this trip, and to me, it feels very solo, very bold and brave to sign up to go on a group with strangers who you've never met before. They don't know any of that stuff about you. So it's sort of a clean slate to show up and allow yourself to experience the new food and the new environment and the new schedule and whatever, just as your raw self. Even if we don't realize we're doing that, I feel like when else in the world do you have a chance to truly step outside of your day-to-day life?
Absolutely. And I have a lot of parents in particular. I'm not a parent, we're child free, but I have a lot of people that women in particular that like feel like they can't leave their families behind. That, there's this stigma, I think, with parents too, of like, my household won't run without me, or I'm going to be perceived as a bad parent if I travel without my kids or my spouse. Like, it's selfish to go on a vacation without my family. And I always tell people, again, not a parent, but from an outside perspective and from what I've heard from other parents, like, you will be a better partner, employee, mother, father, whatever it is, as a result of taking time for yourself and doing this for yourself. You'll come back refreshed, renew with different perspectives, things that you can share with your family or your kids or whoever as a result of going on these vacations or taking that time for yourself. I don't think it's selfish at all to want to do something for yourself, whether you're in a relationship or not. Like you said, when you strip away all of those things and you just get to be you, like then you get to go home and remember like you are a whole person, whether you're married or a parent, like you are a person that needs to take care of yourself and have your own identity. And I think when we're sucked up in our lives at home, like we kind of forget that, especially I think as parents or even people who are in long-term partnerships or relationships. I think people kind of like lose who they are. I hear that all the time, and myself included. After a 10-year marriage, I was like, I don't know who I am anymore. Like I didn't really have that opportunity to like step away and reflect on it. So I do think it's really, really important to be able to do that. And I've had time and time again where I've had mothers on my trips who say, like, it's the best thing I did as a mom to be able to go do something for myself.
Yeah, I think no matter what our day-to-day life looks like, I mean, you and I are both deliberately child-free, and we'll talk about that. But yeah, I think no matter what role we embody, leader, boss, employee, whatever, it's so easy to get lost in the day to day because the days just keep piling up, and like we have not normalized in society taking breaks for self discovery or, stepping outside of our routine to be more productive, like stopping work earlier so that you get more done tomorrow. Like that's just not the way we have been conditioned in the world. So, yeah, I think it's very easy for us to disconnect with the core identity of who we are at that like soul level, totally unintentionally. And I love what you said about it being essentially self-care. I did another episode with this amazing child-free icon named Marsha Davis. And she, in this case, we were talking about the decision whether or not to be a parent. And of course, as child-free people, we sometimes hear that it's selfish. Some child-free people think being a parent is selfish, where this is not about comparison. But I think giving yourself time to understand who you are and what you really want your life to look like, that isn't selfish at all. That's like the most profound level of self-care. And to your point, that makes us better for everybody who we interact with, whether that's a spouse, a partner, a friend, as a daughter, as, a mentor to your friends' kids. Like it doesn't matter who we interact with, we're interacting with somebody. And I think becoming more whole by giving this gift to ourselves enriches everybody that we touch.
Absolutely. And I, as a person who travels pretty much monthly and internationally almost monthly and has been doing it for a long time, like I still say I'm a different person every time I come home. Like I'm a better person every time I come home. Even if I go to Morocco 6 times, the seventh time, it's still going to change me. Every single time I feel a little bit different as a result of travel. And I think that just like continues to build on itself over time. It's not a one and done thing. And we're always changing and growing. But like I said, I think travel, like it just gives you that like, accelerated push to like open your eyes and see something beyond yourself. That was, I always say like the two biggest decisions I've made in my life thus far, which is getting a divorce and starting a business, they both happened on a trip while I was traveling. I decided to get a divorce. Obviously, it was a long time coming, but I decided to get a divorce when I was in Barcelona standing in front of Adele. I had a concert and I was standing there. My ex-husband was in the back, like doing whatever. I didn't care. But I was up front, like singing with Adele. And I remembered I lived in Spain twice when I was like early 20s. And I remember standing there and just being like, what the hell am I doing? Like, I am so unhappy. I was like, I used to be this person and I used to travel and I used to be free. And like, I haven't been doing anything that I used to do. And I didn't recognize myself. And so I literally decided in that moment when I got home, I was going to leave my husband. And I did. And then same thing happened. I'd always wanted to go to Turkey. I went to Cappadocia, Turkey. I had this like vision in my mind of being in a hot air balloon in Cappadocia, Turkey. And when I went, I was like in that hot air balloon and I looked out and I remember I told my friend, I said, when I get home, I'm quitting my job. And when I got home, I quit my job. Like those things, maybe they would have happened, but I don't know if they would have happened as quickly or as decisively had I not had those experiences traveling where you just realize like, holy shit, the world is so much bigger than me. There's so much more out there. Like every time I travel, I feel smaller and smaller and smaller in a good way. And it makes you realize like how little a lot of the things that we make out to be really big, like actually matter.
So well said. Yes. I love that. It's like the more our perspective expands, the more clearly we see ourselves. Like the less it becomes about us, the more you can just kind of strip all that ego and stuff out. And then some of those decisions, even though they're major, like what you described, leaving your husband, leaving your job, they become so clear when you strip all that away.
Absolutely.
So cool. Okay, let's talk about the destinations where you take your trips because you could be taking people to New York or LA or London, and there would be nothing wrong with that. I love all of those cities, but I feel like there's this layer to the work that you do and the destinations you select about them. I don't want to just say like off the beaten path because that's not, depending on where you live, that's a totally relative thing, but it feels like they are destinations that maybe are misunderstood by a lot of us here in the West. So, how do you select the locations and how do you think about that?
Yeah, it's kind of something that honestly happened very organically with my business. It wasn't like when I started, I was like, I'm gonna start taking people to misrepresented countries, or I kind of like had the idea in my mind of like off the beaten path just because that's how kind of how I was traveling. Not that I was taking trips to like the craziest places in the world. I'm not like taking people to Afghanistan or anything, but it was definitely places that got reactions out of people and not usually good reactions. And that's definitely something I picked up on before I even started a business. Like I said, if I was at work and they're like, where are you off to next? Then I'd say, oh, I'm going to Turkey. And they're like, why the hell would you do that? Like, it was never like, oh, cool, that's so amazing. It was usually like, why would you do that? Or why would you want to go there? Or like, isn't that dangerous? Or Colombia, like, are you going to get abducted? Are you going to get kidnapped? Like, there was always just like these negative things said about all these places. And these are places like that I felt called to go. And that hasn't really changed. Even after I started my business and now I'm, 3, 4 years in, I'm still picking places where I feel called to go. I'm not picking them based on what other people want to do. Because if I picked what other people wanted to do, we'd be going to Paris, we'd be going to London, we'd be going to Italy. And again, nothing wrong with those places. Those aren't places that, one, I feel like people necessarily need me for, but they're also like places that just don't really have my heart or interest. I feel really, it sounds so corny, but like I feel called to go to places. There's actually something called astrocartography where like people, it goes along with astrology where you could like put all your, astrological stuff into a map and it would show lines all over the world of like different places that you are connected to personally. And it's funny because I've looked at that before, and a lot of times the places that I am in the most or have had like certain things happen in certain places, like it lines right up on a map. So that's fascinating. But aside from that, it's really just like the places like I see something and I'm like, I'm going there. Like that's happening. I just have a list. I've always had a list long before I ever had a business. And the one time I've deviated from that list and did what other people wanted to do, it was my worst selling trip. It was the trip that everybody asked me to do the most. It was the most, if I polled people, it was the place they wanted to go the most. It was the largest wait list I ever had. And the trip completely, I shouldn't say completely bombed, but it was my worst selling trip. And so I decided, you know what, screw that. I'm not going where other people want to go. That's not the premise of my business. The whole premise is that people are looking to me to see where to go. And that's what I learned is that they're looking to me and saying, where should we go next? Like it's gotten to the point where people are like, I'll follow you anywhere. Like take me wherever. Show me something different. Show me a place that I never thought I would want to go. And that's how we end up in places like Georgia. Because I would say if you poll the average person, like 50% of people are going to tell you that Georgia is only a state in the United States. They're not going to know it's a country in Eastern Europe. A lot of people have no idea that Georgia is even a country. And somehow I've convinced a whole group of people to go there with me this fall and they know nothing about it. And so I've just really leaned into that, like picking these places that people know nothing about but are curious about, and knowing that these are places that people do need maybe a little more hand holding to visit. So it's places that like India, where maybe women are a little scared to go there alone. And quite honestly, I don't think they should go there alone. Not saying you can't. I would never tell somebody you can't travel alone as a woman. But I think knowing what I know about certain places, I do think that it is safer to travel in a group and it's easier to travel in a group to certain places. So I really leaned into that too. It's just, this is a place I definitely wish I had a group to go with, or I would have had somebody guiding me through it. It would have been a lot easier. Places like Cuba, which is like as an American, one, we're not allowed to go there as tourists. We have to go under a visa. But even if you Googled it and figured it out on your own, guaranteed some crazy shit's probably going to happen if you try to do it on your own, because it's just a very, very, very complicated place to go. And yet, when I take people, because I have so many contacts and a great team in Cuba who are looking out for us and make everything kind of go seamless for everybody, it's my best selling trip. It's the trip that people repeat over and over and over. I have somebody booking it for the third time. I would say more often than not, people say changed their lives. I just don't think like that happens when you go to maybe London. Like London's great and I've been there and it's cool. And I think a lot of these places like I've personally been to, and I can say, yeah, that was really cool and nice and pretty and I had a good time and I saw cool things, but like did it like stir my soul? Did it like affect me the same way going to a place like Cuba or India or Morocco, like Kenya? Like I said, stirring my soul would probably be the best way to describe it, but it doesn't have that like emotional pull the way some of these other places do. And so I've really leaned into that. And like, I want other people to experience that and not be afraid of it.
It feels related to like what we were talking about with the further you step outside your day-to-day routine and kind of give yourself grace to step out of some of those archetypes that we get built into in our daily life. Like the further you can distance yourself from that, the more opportunity you have to transform. And like I live in Chicago. I love going to New York. I love going to London. Paris feels a little bit different, but it's like I'm painting in extremely broad strokes, but London, you could make an argument that what I do in London isn't all that different than what I do here in Chicago, right? I go to very cool restaurants, I go to museums, not everyone, but English is the primary spoken language. So when it comes to a soul stirring experience, yeah, like being in a culture, being immersed in a culture that is much more distinct from what we're used to or maybe have ever been exposed to, it makes sense that, again, kind of that stripping back to just, you have to show up and be your raw self because you don't know what else to do. Like you've never been in this type of experience before. I think that is really powerful. And I also think people are scared to figure it out for themselves or just don't know where to start or don't have the time. So, what you're doing to give them access to that, I think is very beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, like you said, and again, this is not dissing those locations. I'm going to New York in May. I love New York. I lived in Spain. I love Madrid. Like, there's nothing wrong with these places. But like, travel's obviously addicting for people. And I think the more you do it, the more you want more. But I've learned that the more I do this type of travel, the more I'm like, what else is out there that I haven't seen? It's almost like the more I learn, the more I realize like how little I know. The deeper you dig, the more you realize there's like just so much more to uncover. And if you just kind of stick with that like surface level travel, the resorts, the cruise ships, like this is nice and fun and relaxing, like that's great for that type of travel. But like the more you kind of like dig in, you, I think, almost become addicted to wanting more of that type of travel. And I do think that's why I get a lot of people repeating and coming back for more because they're like, okay, where are we going next? Like, let's go somewhere else that's really cool. I want an adventure. Like, I want an experience. I don't just want a vacation. I want to be challenged. Like, I want to see things that I would never see otherwise. And I also say I love Anthony Bourdain, but there's an Anthony Bourdain quote that I love, and it's long, but the first line of it is travel isn't always pretty. And that's kind of like my motto when I'm traveling is that I don't expect travel to just be beautiful and catered to Western culture and be everything I'm familiar with and, fine dining and nice restaurants and resorts and beaches. Like that's a very procured version of travel that I think some people love, and that's fine. But I think travel is meant to be a little like down and dirty. And I think like some people don't want to see my first business coach. I remember talking to her and telling her, I really want to take a group to Cuba. And she was like, ooh, I wouldn't do that. And I was like, why? And she had been to Cuba and she's like, it's just so sad. She had been there, but she's like, I just can't imagine people like being on vacation and then like you're just seeing like sad things everywhere. It's just sad. And she's like, and it's dirty and this and it's real. I'm like, yeah, so it's like real life, like you're seeing a country as it is and not the resort version, because the resort version of Cuba does exist. And then there's the real side of Cuba, just like there's the resort version of Mexico, and then there's real Mexico. And I think like some people, that's fine if you want that, like I said, procured version where everything's kind of like handed to you on a silver platter and, you're eating at buffets and you're just seeing the beach and you're never leaving the walls of the resort. But I would rather like get in with the locals and see reality and see how people are living and learn about how they're living and be faced with that, even if it is a little sad sometimes, because that's life and that's what's going on in a lot of these places. I would rather like be aware of it than kind of turn a blind eye to it just because I'm on my vacation.
Yeah, that comment that person made, it's borderline offensive, right?
It is offensive.
Yeah, it's offensive.
I wouldn't even say borderline.
You're right. It's offensive and probably not intended that way, but I think that's true. Like we can just our gaze can sweep over all of these places, and especially when you're in the mindset of I'm doing this to treat myself or I quote unquote deserve it. It's very slippery to get into this area where you're doing very glossy things and maybe perpetuating an impression of a place that actually does not exist, and it would just be kind of Pleasantville style Truman Show world to think that it does exist. And that's a very layered problem, I think, in the way we view the world. And yeah, I know having a positive impact through your travel work is important to you. And I get the sense that not just on your clients that you take on these trips, but overall, like the way your business behaves and interacts with the world and kind of this ripple effect that you have in these places. How do you sort of protect the experience from the perspective of the locals and ensure that we are going there with respect and the right intentions? And it's not just for us to have this like wonderland playground soul stirring thing. We're stepping into their real lives, right? Like how do you kind of walk through that with your clients that you're going to take into these lesser traveled places?
Yeah, it is like a slippery slope with travel, and it's also always changing. It's really challenging. Even like in the, 3.5 years I've been doing this, over tourism is a problem. And It's hard because like you don't want to like gatekeep destinations because tourism is a good thing to an extent in a lot of these places. Some places need the tourism and they want the tourism because that's bringing dollars into their economy and putting food on their tables. But when Instagram takes over and everybody's sharing going to these places, sometimes it can get really out of control. Like, for example, Barcelona. There's been riots in Barcelona off and on in the last few months because they don't want tourism. They're literally like, go home. Like, leave us alone. Let us live our lives. Like, let us live in our city because tourism has gotten out of control. And that's common in a lot of places. And it is that fine line between like you want to bring people places and you want to share where you are, but you also don't want it to become overrun where people are feeling like, a zoo attraction. And then it's losing its authenticity and it's losing all the things that you loved about it to begin with. I've seen, things even like I go to Mexico City for Day of the Dead. This year will be my 5th group there. I've seen it change in 5 years where what once was a religious holiday and celebration is now become this commercialized thing that, is even celebrated in the United States. And like the lines get long, everything's popular, everything's overbooked, like everybody wants to be there. It's hard because in one way it's like, well, we're doing it too. So I mean, it's not like we're above everyone else, but it is hard to feel like sometimes you're contributing to that in a negative way. And so I'm always kind of monitoring like, is this a place I want to continue taking people? Do I want to contribute to this? Or is this something I kind of don't want to be associated with anymore? I keep my group small for a reason. It's because I'm not going to pack 40 people into somebody's house. There's some things that you can just only do with a small group and have it still feel authentic and intimate. It is that fine line of like being respectful to the locals and supporting them without them feeling like they're some kind of spectacle, something to be pitied or even like taking pictures and things like that, showing respect in those types of areas too. So like for example, when I take my group to Mexico City, I have a whole page in my orientation about how to celebrate Day of the Dead ethically, because there's a lot of questions about like, what can I do and what can't I do? And I think there's a lot of opinions about it. And sometimes I don't even think there's a right or a wrong, but just to give people awareness of like, this is okay and this is not okay, or ask permission before you do this. Or, generally people really appreciate it when you do this. And like I said, sometimes there isn't a right or wrong. Sometimes it's asking people how they feel about it. Cause I also like, I don't think you can speak for a whole culture. That's just like saying like all Americans believe this or all Americans like it when you do that. Like that's not true. So, sometimes it's just asking somebody how they feel about something, or is it okay if I take a picture? Or is it okay if I do this? Same thing with India for Holi. They're throwing colors and, there's a lot of things with that as well as a celebration of like what you can and can't do and what you should and shouldn't expect and that kind of thing. So it is tricky, but I really try to focus on bringing people to places that need more tourism, that want more tourism, that are appreciative of tourism, and that our tourism dollars are going back to those countries. Because when you really think about, the average vacation in another country, how many people are thinking about where that money is actually going? Or if you take a cruise with an American cruise line and you're hitting up 4 countries along the way, where's that money actually going? Is it going to the locals or is it going back to a company in the United States and maybe they're paying, some people along the way? But I mean, for the most part, you're probably not supporting those countries. And if you are, it's probably a couple of partners that they've agreed to work with when you get off the dock and they give you your little tours that you need to go on and you should go eat in this restaurant and you should shop in these shops. When in reality, you should be going far beyond that and sharing the wealth with all these other people that probably get none of that tourism. So I could go on about it forever, but it's really a huge topic, I think, of just people really trying to be mindful about like where their money is going and who's getting it when they shop and when they eat and where they go and where they stay, like who they're supporting. Cause I just don't think it's like an ignorance thing. I think people just don't think about it. They're just eating and drinking and enjoying themselves. And it's not something that people like put a lot of consideration into. So that's kind of my job, is to make sure that like when we go to Cuba, we are 100% employing Cubans. And you ask our drivers in Cuba, they would say that they look forward all year to my groups coming. It's their favorite time of year because they get to spend 2 to 3 weeks with my groups. They're employed every day. They have a good paying job. They get to have fun with us. We take them along with us for the ride. We're making sure that they're well taken care of. And I don't think like every travel company can say that, unfortunately.
Laura, this is a whole other layer of why we need you because yes, like I love that you are bringing that ethical approach and asking the questions and paying attention as things inevitably do change. And there could be a time, it's so crazy. Like sometimes I see this on the news where a location blows up on Instagram and I sort of forget the power that an influencer or celebrity or whatever can have. And it ruins it. Like this happened with the poppy fields a couple years ago. And they were like, please, 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 like you're ruining the ecosystem for the poppies. Like stop coming to take selfies with the poppies. It's so wild. Like we as individuals all add up to this massive force of people that can really change an ecosystem or a culture. And we can do that responsibly and ethically and in a way that empowers the locations we're going to with the money that we're going to spend on a trip either way, right? Let's get it into the hands of people who need it and want it, or we can have a negative effect. But it is also overwhelming to figure all of that out and constantly be in the know on like what is the most ethical, conscious way to travel. So I'm grateful that we have people like you who can help us figure it out, right? And we can trust that if we go to somebody like you, you're not going to lead us astray and make us be unintentionally part of something that we actually don't align or agree with.
Yeah, and I think like you just said, unintentionally. I think it's not that people don't care, it's that they don't know. They just have no idea. And I've done it too. We're all guilty of it. Like at some point, you think about it and you're like, oh, shoot, like maybe I shouldn't have done that. Or maybe I should have gone there. Or I had no idea that that wasn't ethical. Or like I didn't know that, like even in India, I see all these people riding elephants. And I'm like, that,
So bad for the elephants.
yeah, like that can't be good. I know enough about like elephant tourism, but I Googled it, I researched it. It's definitely not good for the elephants, you know? So then I was like really informed and I told my groups, like, please, obviously that people can do whatever they want, but I'm like, please don't ride elephants. Or like, I do a lot of research on animal treatment and make sure that, like, if we're riding camels, that it's, I've had people be like, oh, you can't ride camels and that's not safe and blah, 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 blah. It's like, well, I've done research on it too. It's not like I'm just hopping on a camel and, like trying to hurt animals. I don't always know what's right or wrong. Sometimes I have to do my own research and make sure, like, I know the guys personally who take care of the camels that we ride in the Sahara Desert. They're my friends. I've known them for 4 years. It's their full-time job to take care of the camels. I see how they take care of the camels. I know where the camels sleep. They all have names. Like they're very well cared for and they can carry a hell of a lot more than my body on their back. Like they're going to be okay. But like that's not always the case. And so I understand why people, I would rather have somebody be concerned about it than not concerned at all. But a lot of it is just like education, doing your research on the places that you're going and the activities that you're doing. And like I said, it's a tricky subject. I don't think anyone is an expert on it necessarily. I think like everybody has to do the best that they can and we all make mistakes. But, the other thing that I do aside from obviously just researching is we have positive impact built into our trips. So I have just found obviously you can be giving back throughout your trip and there's ways to do that. But I make a conscious effort to build it into the trip where there's activities that we're doing that are giving back along the way. I could just tell my group, like, okay, I donated $500 to a school as part of our trip. But to me, that does not have the same impact as it does when I take a group to a school in Morocco and I hand over a bunch of school supplies to my group and I say, go give this out to the kids, go play with them, go engage with them. That has a way, way, way bigger impact than just donating money. Plus, like when you donate money, you don't really know where it's going to go. And sometimes those countries don't have the resources to like buy the things that we can bring from the States. So Cuba, I just had 3 groups go in January, and I think we brought 27 suitcases of supplies, medical supplies, clothing, school supplies, toys. Like, you could donate all the money in the world to Cuba. They can't buy those things. They don't have access to it. So the only way for them to get it is for us to literally bring it to them. They can't buy medicine. They don't have places to get a lot of that stuff. So that's become like one of the most important parts of my business is getting people not just to like know about it, but to experience what it's like to give back through travel and to see the faces of the people you're giving things to, not just knowing that I'm doing it or like trusting and hoping that I'm doing it, but that they get to do it. Because I love giving gifts. Like I'm a gift giver. Like I love giving things to people. It's like when you give someone a gift, you don't want them to open it in private. Like you want to see them open it. You want to see the smile on their face. You want to see how it makes them feel. And like to me, that's part of travel is like getting to see how something you have done has affected people. I think it makes you want more of it. It makes you want to do more. It makes you realize like every time I go to Cuba, I warn my groups before they go that I'm like, you can bring stuff if you want. You don't have to, but I'm like, I'm just going to tell you, I can almost guarantee you that after you're there and you meet the people and you see the impact that this has, you're going to go, I should have done more and I could have done more and I wish I had done more and I want to do more. And then it's too late unless you go back again. So I think it's like one of those things like once it's in front of you and you can humanize it and you see actual faces of people and you learn their names and you learn their stories, like that's when you're like, okay, I could do more than what I'm doing. Like I could tip more. If I can afford this hotel, I can afford to give this guy an extra few dollars, or I can afford a few extra things here and there. That's been like one of the biggest things for me. And so I want people to experience that, whether they want to or not. It's part of my trips. And so if they don't like that, then there's lots of companies out there that don't care, I guess.
That is so powerful. Honestly, I really, really commend you for that. I have never heard of another company doing that. And we use the phrase ripple effect all the time. Like I use that in the way I talk about things, but I feel like that is an example of a real ripple effect. Everything you just described, it's not just like, yes, it is the ripple effect of the supplies that you're bringing, of the physical things, be it money or all the other stuff that these people get to now utilize in the ways that they need it. But the ripple effect of having that human experience as the traveler to be boots on the ground, face to face with another human, like I can only imagine how that does change people. People look at generosity differently forever, not just while they're on that trip. But I feel like when something that tangible and that personal happens to you, you carry it with you.
Absolutely. It changes how I tip at home. I mean, how many times have you sat there like with a bill at a restaurant and you're like figuring out it's like, who cares? It's $1. What's an extra dollar? What's an extra like 50 cents? Like, is this that big of a deal? It really has changed my perspective on money in a lot of ways. But you've seen like how little things can make somebody's day and like it's not that important to me in the long run. Am I going to miss the like dollar that I tipped extra or, like things like that, or just like doing something nice for somebody? I've always been a laid back person, but I feel like it's just really made me not think a whole lot of things are a big deal. Because when you've seen, you can't unsee things, like you can't unexperience things. Every once in a while, I have somebody that goes to Cuba with me that probably was not cut out for Cuba. And they come home and they're like, oh, like I just can't believe blah, 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 blah. And they're kind of griping about it. It doesn't happen very often, but every once in a while, I get somebody and I'm just like, I don't understand because when I go to Cuba, I come home grateful, appreciative, sad in a way for other people, but like so appreciative of what I have and like so grateful for what I have. And like I look at everything with different eyes. Like people will tell me, I get these messages in our group chats after we go to Cuba, and they're like, I went to the grocery store today and I looked at it with new eyes. They're like, I'm almost overwhelmed with how much I have at my fingertips and how I can just have everything so easily and like can have anything I want. It's like an overwhelming experience after you've been to a place like Cuba. Or like the fact that I can just get a hot shower whenever I want and my bed is comfortable and the power isn't going to go out on me and I don't need to worry about how I'm going to charge my phone or if I can contact my loved ones. If you don't experience something like that and come home feeling a little bit changed or different, then I think you have something to work on within yourself.
Yeah, I feel like people are ready for different things at different times, and like I could sit here and be like, yeah, of course. Like, what a great experience to go and really live, even for a week, 10 days, like how other people live in different parts of the world, and then just recognize like how much we have to be grateful for here, even the stuff that a lot of us complain about, like going to the grocery store, to have that fresh perspective, I think is really important and really beautiful. And also, I can admit that there are times where doing a really immersive, you know, quote unquote tough trip like this doesn't sound like something I can take on emotionally in that season.
Mhm.
So, I think
Absolutely.
people are ready for different things at different times. And that's why, like, it's good that this exists. And I think even hopefully listening to this, right, can be like one first step into thinking about our worldview a little bit differently, or maybe like thinking how we can be more adventurous or free spirited without going overseas, like just something we can do right now, this week, this weekend, whatever. Like trying to embrace this mindset, whether we're going on a large scale adventure or not. I feel like any progress we can make is important.
Yeah, and I always tell people, like, you don't have to go on a big 10-day international trip to a scary foreign country. That doesn't have to be like you don't have to go from 0 to 100. There's baby steps in between if that's not something you're ready for. I always tell people, like, if it scares you to go to dinner by yourself, if that's an intimidating thing for you, or even like go to a movie by yourself or something, like if that's uncomfortable, try that. Like force yourself to sit in a restaurant by yourself without being on your phone and see if you can get through that. And then maybe you go to a town, a few hours away for a weekend by yourself and see if you can do that. Maybe it's in the US. It doesn't have to be that you go to Morocco or Cuba and just go all the way. Like it can be something in between. Or you can just throw yourself to the wolves. And I see people do that too, where they're like, I just got my passport and now I'm going to India. And I'm like, okay, it doesn't have to be that. And it doesn't have to be international. You can challenge yourself in all kinds of social situations. It doesn't have to be international travel.
To each their own, right? Like whatever feels right in whatever season, there's always something we can try.
Absolutely.
Okay, speaking of to each their own, obviously I'm child free. You are deliberately child free too. And I love highlighting different child free perspectives and just points of view on this podcast. And I think sometimes travel can be associated. I'll meet people who are child free and travel is a big part of their lives. Of course, I meet people who are parents, travel is a big part of their lives. But there is this association with time freedom that being child free allows, and I don't know what, like mental freedom, creative freedom to possibly embrace some of these types of trips or travel in general. So I would love to hear from you. How has child free impacted either the way you view this work or maybe even your capacity to do this work? Like, do you think about that connection?
Yeah, all the time. I always say, like, I didn't have children, but like in a way, I feel like my business is my baby and the people that travel with me, like they call me group trip mom. And I feel like in a way they are like my group trip babies, like I think I put the energy and love into my business and the people I travel with in my travel community. I've really like built a family out of that. I don't think I could do that if I had kids. I don't think I would have had enough of me to go around. I honestly don't think my business would exist if I had children. So I think I've taken all that energy that would have been put elsewhere or potentially just zapped out of me. I think I would be probably in a 9 to 5 doing kind of the normal thing that I was doing before. And my divorce happened for a reason. And I think me not finding another partner and not having kids and then finally kind of making that decision. And I think travel was honestly a huge piece of that. Like, I think I realized after I got a divorce, I think there was a small window after getting divorced where I was, 34. I had a panic of like biological clock. And like, I remember doing the math of like, if I find a partner soon and then I'm going to have to be with them for this long before I would even think about having kids. And like, it wasn't even that I was 100% confident I wanted to have kids. It was that I felt like that decision was being taken away from me. And there was like this time on it as I was approaching my late 30s, I felt like my choice was being taken away. It wasn't even that I was like, I need to have them. It was like, well, if I want to have them, I don't feel like I have this choice. But as I like dated and just didn't really find anybody, and I started traveling and I just started becoming way more independent and happy alone, travel just made me realize I'd be giving up a lot if I had kids. Like, I wouldn't be able to do this all the time. And it's not that there's anything wrong with having children. I just was like, I won't have this type of freedom if I have kids. Like, I wouldn't be able to just pick up and go when I want. There's a lot more people to consider when you have children. So it's given me like this beautiful life of freedom that I didn't know I needed and wanted. I really do think it happened all like the way it was intended to.
That's beautiful. I love that. It's amazing how we look back and, certain things that feel scary or even panicky in the moment, like how will this work out or will this work out the way that I want it to? Or, there's so many thoughts that run through our head just on the day to day of trying to figure out life. And then it's such a beautiful full circle thing when you can look back and be like, okay, now I see like this happened for a reason at this time, at this age, whatever. And you're in a place of personal freedom, expansion, fulfillment, and you're providing this opportunity for expansion and freedom and fulfillment for so many others. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you for coming here. Thank you for sharing all of this with us. For anybody listening who is ready to go on a trip or at least ready to learn more, tell the people what you have going on and where the best place is to connect with you.
I have trips coming up to Greece. We have a Greek sailing trip in June. I have Morocco in September. That's a women only trip that I'm currently filling. I have Mexico City for Day of the Dead in October. And then early October, I have wine harvest in Georgia. So if you're wondering what Georgia, the country is like, not the state, and you like wine, it's a great trip. Cuba in January for New Year's. And then I have one spot left on my Kenyan safari next March. That one filled up really fast. Might have to add a second trip to that. I have India for Holi next February. That one is super fun. And then I am working on some new ones that are in process. I'll be bringing back Colombia, and I'm working on Japan, and hopefully some more will be announced soon. So yeah, lots of fun trips. Most of them are co-ed. I also am hosting private group trips. So people want to travel with their audience, or if you want to take like a child-free group of women, I'm doing private trips for people too, where they can travel with either their friends, their family, their coworkers, their followers, whatever. We can pick the destination and I'll cater the trip to you. As far as where to find me, it's lauraericson.com. There's no K in Erickson. I always have to tell people that. And Instagram, Lolo Whiskey.
Love it. Ah, perfect. Okay. Everything sounds so exciting. So I'm sure people are going to go look up all of those trips. Thank you so much for spending time with us and congratulations on what you've built.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening. Now I want to hear what you learned. DM me on Instagram at Curious Life of a Child-Free Woman or leave a review with your top takeaway. These ratings really do make a difference. If you're not a member of the Curious Life Club yet, you are invited. Visit CuriousLifeOfAChildFreeWoman.com to join the conversation, share suggestions, and be first to know the next curious topic. I appreciate you, and I'll see you next week.